Welcome to the, whatever this day is, May 31st, council work session, last day of May. And by request of Councilor Zelenka, which I agree, I suggest that we just have a moment of silence in honor of the gentlemen who gave their lives to intervene in a terrible incident in Portland. And we happened right over Memorial Day, and so we just take a moment. Thank you all. Thank you. Okay. Our first order of business, Transportation System Plan.
Thank you. I'm just going to turn it over to Kurt Corey, our Public Works Director.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Just by way of a few introductory comments. With me at the table, starting at the far left, is Mark Schoening, who you all know is city engineer and the office overseeing the preparation of the 2035 Transportation System Plan. And on my left, Rob Interfeld, the heads up the Transportation Planning section of Public Works Engineering. And it occurred to me I should probably acknowledge the work of Kurt Geider, who spent a lot of years working on this process. This is not a brand new project we've been working on. And Kurt ultimately opted to retire before he could get us to the finish line on this, but we do appreciate the many years he spent working on this as well. So we are going to walk you through, go ahead to the next slide. It may not work. Yeah. In terms of what we talk about today, yeah, go ahead and just flip. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the purpose and importance of the TSP effort. All of us will tag team on the presentation. We'll talk with you about the process we've been through that's gotten us to this point today, including a summary of the public involvement efforts. Talk individually about the key issues, several key issues that have been raised during the course of debating and deliberation on the plan. We'll talk about the Transportation System Plan implementation items already underway, and then finish up with next steps. So I'm going to take just a minute and presume that someone might flip on this tape of the work session today and might be their only exposure to transportation planning. So I wanted to give you about a 60-second overview of transportation planning. So there's a lot of acronyms associated with this type of work, and so I'll try to avoid those. But beginning with the Central Lane MPO region, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization region, comprised of the Eugene, Springfield metro areas and the city of Coburg. Those areas comprise the Central Lane MPO region. Long-range transportation plans are prepared by the MPO. And our MPO is LCOG, or the Lane Council of Governments. So there are two primary long-range transportation plans that fall under their auspices. These are the Regional Transportation Plan and the Regional Transportation System Plan. The Regional Transportation Plan, or the RTP, is a federally mandated plan for municipalities over 50,000. Work on updating that particular document has been underway for a number of years, and in fact, the MPC, or the Metropolitan Planning Committee, on which Mayor Venus and Councilor Zelenka participate, actually adopted the RTP earlier this month. The RTSP, or the Regional Transportation System Plan, is a state-mandated plan, functionally serves as a link between the city-specific TSPs and the federally mandated RTP. The RTSP for our area has been in the form of what you all know as TransPlan, which was adopted in 2001 and amended in 2002. TransPlan will continue to serve as Eugene's specific TSP until you adopt the Eugene specific 2035 TSP hopefully in the very near future. The RTSP is comprised of the Coburg specific, Springfield specific, Eugene specific, other documents such as the Regional Transportation Options Plan and the Long Range Transit Plan. All of those elements of the RTSP have previously been completed with the exception of the Eugene specific plan. The plans for the cities of Springfield and Coburg were actually completed and adopted about 3 years ago. So we're the last step in the process here. Rob will provide a little more detail on how we got to this point, but suffice to say that for a number of years, the RTP, the RTSP were kind of one big happy family. Eugene and Springfield historically had a combined urban growth boundary. With the passage of House Bill 3337 in 2007, now 10 years ago, we were required then to develop separate UGBs for the two cities and thus the city-specific transportation plans. And the work on those began shortly after that 2007 legislative action. As indicated in this slide, all the planning documents are in order, and we're trying to get to the finish line on the RTSP. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob to give you kind of how we've gotten to the point here today.
Great. So I'm going to build on what Kurt just described by going over the timeline of how we got to where we are. So in 2007, the MPC adopted the federally mandated regional transportation plan, and subsequent to that, in 2011 and then again this year, updates to the RTP have been adopted by the MPC. When an RTP is adopted, it triggers a state requirement that the RTSP be made consistent with that RTP. And so we're still sort of waiting to do that until after the city's TSP is adopted. So that's part of why it's important to adopt the RTSP, because it complies with the state requirement. We actually have a work plan that was agreed to with the LCDC, the Land and Conservation Development Commission. So we're still under the sort of that work plan, and we're, like Kurt said, we're nearing the finish line. And then so we needed to get started on creating a new TSP for Eugene as a result of that trigger. And so in 2010, the city started working on both the Eugene 2035 TSP and the pedestrian and bicycle master plan. And then in 2012, the city council accepted the pedestrian and bicycle master plan, and there was a decision made that it would be adopted as part of the TSP. But by accepting it, it sets as a blueprint for Eugene that we could start working on implementing that pedestrian and bicycle master plan, because we knew it was still going to be a while before the TSP was adopted. Then a few years later, there was a draft TSP ready, and there were in last spring a joint planning commission public hearing between the city of Eugene and Lane County planning commissions was held on the draft TSP. And then last December, the Eugene Planning Commission approved a pretty broad set of recommendations for revising that draft TSP. And then in January of this year, the Lane County Planning Commission approved the TSP and had a few more recommendations. And subsequent to that, the draft TSP was updated to reflect all of the recommendations from the two planning commissions. And then that's the draft that you received. And then you'll remember that there have been two joint city council and county board public hearings that have been held this year, one in March and the other one was held last month. So now I'm going to go review the public involvement that's been held for the Eugene 2035 TSP. there's been significant public involvement throughout the planning process. For the pedestrian and bicycle master plan, there was a project advisory committee that met 7 times, and there were also 2 open houses for the project. And then modeling Envision Eugene, we created a group called the Transportation Community Resource Group that met 12 times between 2011 and 2015. So it was sort of like a loose sort of super committee of people that could opt in, and around 80 people participated overall, people from throughout the community representing a broad range of stakeholder interests. And the TCRG in their meetings covered a broad range of issues, including level of service standards, how we allocate space within the right-of-way to different modes of transportation, sustainability metrics, transportation demand management, the role of public transportation, the connection between transportation and land use, and of course, the goals, policies, and capital projects that are part of the TSP. We also had significant outreach to different neighborhood associations throughout the city, as well as different boards and commissions, and some other groups that we reached out to, for example, were the Chamber of Commerce and the Human Services Network. And then lastly, we participated in open houses that were held for the Envision Eugene process. For the more recent series of public hearings for the Planning Commission hearing, there were 26 people who testified, and then we received an additional 49 emails. And then for the 2 joint City Council County Board public hearings, there were 41 people who testified, and we received 40 emails. And during that last set of, both for the Planning Commission and the more recent public hearings, there was a series of issues that sort of were where we heard from the community the most, that we sort of saw as the key issues, and we're going to delve a little more deeply into those today. So those were the relationship between the TSP and the Climate Recovery Ordinance, prioritizing active transportation elements of the TSP, safety and Vision Zero, issues on Beltline Highway, and then lastly, the new level service standard that's proposed in the TSP. So now Kurt is going to talk about the Climate Recovery Ordinance and the TSP.
Okay. So certainly a number of comments relating to the connection of the TSP to the Climate Recovery Ordinance, and the easy way here would be to refer you to attachment B of your agenda item summary. That's a fairly comprehensive discussion of that connection, but I'm going to summarize that here rather briefly. Probably the most direct link between the two is the reduced reliance on automobiles, which is also within the document associated with benchmarks and performance measures. And for example, by design and by requirement, the TSP satisfies the state transportation planning rule, which implements statewide planning goal number 12, which, and I quote, the local TSP must be designed to increase transportation choices and reduce reliance on the automobile, end quote. So the 2035 TSP is intentionally designed to make these options more available, more attractive, and more convenient. By the numbers, there are about 264 projects listed in the TSP. 239 of those are entirely bike and ped improvements. An additional 6 are transit improvements, so we are well over 90% in dealing with active transportation in terms of the numbers of projects. And in fact, only 3 of the projects listed have no bicycle or pedestrian elements associated with them. Chapter 2 of the TSP includes a discussion of policies and action items related to greenhouse gas, climate change, and the natural environment. Performance measures and benchmarks are reflected in the document and in the attachment directly from the state transportation planning rule. That's also included as attachment D in the TSP binder. The benchmarks and performance measures are around topics such as the percentage of automobile trips, the percentage of transit mode share, the number of priority bikeway miles, and additional areas associated with nodal development, including the number of acres, number of employees, and splits. The performance measures and benchmarks include, in addition to these items, how each of those will be measured. There's also a monitoring and reporting requirement associated with the document. We have historically and commit again to undertake Eugene-specific monitoring and reporting of the outcomes associated with all of our transportation activities as we have in the past. In addition to that, I would note that the transportation-specific monitoring is included in the growth management monitoring policies of Envision Eugene. Final word on this is that there have been comments as to implementing and enforcing some of these areas. And I think it just needs to be pointed out that the 2035 TSP is an internally directed document. It's neither directive nor regulatory, but it does contemplate that additional legislative actions could and likely will be necessary to achieve all of the goals that have been stipulated for the climate recovery ordinance. The further conversation on all of this, again, I would direct you to attachment B of the agenda item summary.
Another issue that we heard a lot at the public hearings was from people who would like to see active transportation projects prioritized in terms of transportation system plan implementation. And we're already doing this. Besides infrastructure preservation projects, nearly all of the city's capital transportation projects are focused on active transportation. And significant pedestrian and bicycle projects are slated for construction over the next few years. This year, projects under construction are extension of the path along I-5. It's actually ODOT that's constructing this project. They're extending the path that they built several years ago north to Chad Drive, so that'll be a great connection to the VA. And then they're extending it south under Harlow Road and connecting into Garden Way. We're building a bridge and short path in West Eugene that will connect the Fern Ridge path to Commerce Street right by Target. So that'll really increase active transportation access to that Commerce Street business district. And then later this year, we're going to begin constructing a path in the Bethel neighborhood called the Jessen Path that will be run east-west along the south side of Golden Gardens Park from the Beltline path all the way west to Ohio Street. It's going to be around a mile and a quarter long. Next year, we're implementing a project called Northeast Livable Streets, which will build a series of neighborhood greenways, which are great streets for connecting people biking on local streets, and also great for walking and street crossing improvements in the neighborhoods across the river, mostly in Harlow, Cal Young, and the Northeast neighborhoods. And then next year, we're also constructing the active Amazon transportation corridor, which will extend the Amazon path south to the south of Tugman Park. It'll build a two-way protected bikeway on East Amazon Drive from Hilliard all the way to Dillard. And it will build 3 new bicycle and pedestrian bridges over Amazon Creek, connecting the East and West Amazon Drive streets and also provide pedestrian crossings of those streets. And then in 2019, we're constructing a two-way protected bikeway on 13th Avenue from Alder Street to Olive Street. And we'll also be extending the Roosevelt Path, which is an east-west path along Roosevelt Boulevard that currently ends at Maple Street. We'll be extending it east all the way to Highway 99, and it'll connect to the new Highway 99 path that ODOT built a couple years ago. In the photo you see here, this is an example of a project that we built through the street bond, which allocates $516,000 per year for pedestrian and bicycle projects. A lot of the projects we built are safer pedestrian crossings, and this is one on Lower River Road by Fur Lane and Maury Jacobs Park. We're also about to apply for funding for additional pedestrian and bicycle projects through the Central Lane MPO. One of those projects in particular is to build a two-way protected bikeway on High Street that will connect to the Amazon path in South Eugene all the way up towards 6th Avenue. And one of the things that we tried, as you can tell from the different projects that I've described, one of the things we try to do when we're developing pedestrian and bicycle projects is to make sure that there's geographic diversity and that we're building the projects in different parts of Eugene. You heard from us a couple of weeks ago about Vision Zero and transportation safety. This was another item that we heard, or issue that we heard a lot from the community about. And you can see here an example of one of the high crash corridor maps that we showed you. And then one of the things we're trying to do is more community outreach through Vision Zero. So this is our Vision Zero project manager, Larissa Varela, tabling at a recent at a recent safety fair. Another issue was addressing concerns about Beltline Highway. We heard a lot from people about that. And this has been a city council priority going back to 2006 when the city council voted to make this the #1 transportation priority for North and West Eugene. And as part of adopting the transportation system plan, you will be adopting the Beltline facility plan. Within the 20-year project list of the TSP, it includes the multimodal local arterial bridge that will connect Division Avenue to Green Acres Road, and also the improvements at the Delta Beltline interchange that ODOT is currently designing. The other elements of the project will be on beyond 20 years, and that's not to say they couldn't be implemented sooner, but are based on the revenue assumptions. We didn't have enough revenue to put the other elements of the project within the 20 years. ODOT, so the improvements that ODOT is designing at the Delta Beltline interchange, which focus mostly on safety, that is slated to begin construction in 2019. The Beltline NEPA process, so this is the environmental permitting and review that needs to happen for large federally funded transportation projects, will including the local arterial bridge, will begin after the TSP adoption. So ODOT is waiting to start that until the facility plan is adopted through the adoption of the transportation system plan. That will look at both environmental and socioeconomic impacts of the different alternatives that are under consideration. Lastly, we're also collaborating with Lane County on a couple of key projects nearby. One is making Beaver and Hunsaker a complete street. Currently, it's just 2 travel lanes with no place for people to walk or bike, and that's a key connection up to River Road. And also extending the West Bank path that currently ends at Beaver Street north to Wilkes Drive, so that people in the Santa Clara neighborhood have much better access to the Ruth Bascom Riverbank path system.
Okay. Thank you. Rob, so I'm going to follow up with Rob with one of the other issues that was identified, and that was particularly at the Planning Commission, that was the new level of service standard. So this slide or graphic is intended to show the balance between the land use planned in Envision Eugene, the level of service or a mobility standard used to gauge the amount of delay motor vehicles experience at intersections, and then a new transportation capital infrastructure planned to serve the land use that's planned in the future through Envision Eugene, and then the desired mobility. Level of service ranges from, oops, let me go back. I'm going to have to, I'll just continue on this. The level of service ranges from A to F, with A being less than 10 seconds of delay at a signalized intersection, and F being more than 80 seconds of delay at an intersection. Attachment A to your AIS provides more detail on the level of service and the delay associated with each letter grade. And at you had a conversation on the same topic at the Vision Zero work session this past week. The current level of service standards ranges across the city depending upon the geographic location, with downtown being a level of service F, the area surrounding the U of O being a level of service E, and the remainder of the city being a level of service D. The proposal in the draft transportation system plan is to retain the level of service F downtown and to retain or lower the level of service to E for the remainder of the city. And as I mentioned, there was significant concern expressed about the proposed level of service change submitted in the public record for the Planning Commission. And to address these concerns, the Planning Commission, this was the Eugene Planning Commission, recommended 5 specific actions to be included in the Eugene 2035 TSP, and all of those have been incorporated into the current draft. One of the action items was to add traffic calming as a new project to address speeding problems on residential streets with an estimated cost of $100,000 per year over the 20-year lifespan of the document. And then I'll talk about the other action items when I talk about the TSP implementation already underway. See if this, okay. So Rob talked a little bit about active transportation capital improvement projects, and those are implemented and will be currently into the future through the development and adoption of their 6-year capital improvement program. The programs or the operational elements are, those will be incorporated in part of the annual Public Works Strategic Plan. And we develop that plan annually for all of the service that Public Works provides, and transportation is one of those. And so the TSP goals and policies are followed by potential action items that implement one or more of the goals or policies. As Rob mentioned, that the TSP really started in earnest to be updated in 2010, and throughout that process from 2010 going forward, as goals and policies and action items have been developed, some of those have been incorporated into the annual Public Works strategic plan, and that'll continue going forward after this TSP is adopted. And one of those that Rob had talked about was Vision Zero, so that was part of our Public Works strategic work plan, and it's an action item that's currently underway. Another action item is updating the city's street design standards, and this is implementing the roadway and parking policy on complete streets. So the idea is to assure that new streets constructed as part of private development or streets that are upgraded to urban standards as part of the city's capital improvement program provide for all modes of travel. Another and a larger effort is roadway and parking policies that relate to travel time reliability and optimizing the efficiency of our transportation system. And the action item that this is illustrating is updating this city's traffic impact analysis code. So this is an example of where a level of service and new development come together, in that the traffic impact analysis looks at the level of service without a development and with a development, and then if the development lowers that level of service beyond what the standard is, they're required to mitigate that. In this case, the developer on Good Pasture Island Road mitigated that development project, the impacts of that development project, with the construction of this additional bridge across Delta Highway. And there was 3 Planning Commission recommendations that I mentioned earlier that have been incorporated into the TSP that relate to traffic impact analyses and level of service. And that the recommendations are adopting or updating our traffic impact analysis code, administrative rule provisions to expand the measurement of proposed developments' traffic impacts beyond level of service, and correspondingly expand potential mitigation measures beyond those that only address vehicular delay. Amending the traffic impact analysis, the second one is amending the traffic impact analysis provisions to require a review of safety at intersections through a comparison of actual crash rate experienced during the past 3 to 5 years versus the expected crash rates for similar facilities, to determine if improvements would be needed as part of that development project. And then expanding the definition of level of service to include volume to capacity ratio, queuing, and traffic control changes. And so, as I mentioned, this is one of the actions that's already underway in going through a review of our current code related to traffic impact analyses, and then developing a cooperative or a collaborative process between Public Works and Planning and Development as we look at updates to that, because that section of the code is within the land use code. Another action item is programs that support transportation options, and this is one of the system-wide policies on reducing the reliance on single occupancy vehicles. So 2 of our transportation option programs are Smart Trips and Sunday Streets, and we've linked those 2 together. So Smart Trips is a program that provides a comprehensive approach to promote alternatives to single occupancy vehicles, and we take this on neighborhood by neighborhood across the city to develop programs and incentives and provide information for people on what different ways to get around and how best to use the biking or pedestrian network or transit. And then Eugene Sunday Streets is an event where a car-free event where we'll open city streets to bicycles, we'll close them to cars and open it to bicycles and pedestrians or skaters or whatever alternate mode they choose. And we typically have an event downtown, and then we have an event in the neighborhood that we worked with the Smart Trips program with. And so this summer we're doing an event downtown, and then the Smart Trips in River Road, Sunday Streets in River Road as well. Next year we'll be in Southwest Eugene to try to to make that connection between the opening of the new MX route and the Smart Trips program. Another action item that's underway is implementing bike share programming in Eugene. And the plan is that the bike share will launch this fall with about 300 bikes and 35 stations that will serve downtown, the university area, and the Whitaker. And that's the first phase of a multi-phase program. And then the last one that I'm going to touch on is transportation demand management. And this is the expansion of Autzen Stadium is an example of where the land use decision that came along with that proposal to expand the stadium required that transportation demand management measures be put in place. So if you've been to a game there's the university coordinates or works with Lane Transit District to have park and rides across town, such as at South Eugene High School, to bring folks to games on LTD, and there's a huge, also a huge valet bike service there that's part of their transportation demand management. And transportation demand management itself is a general term for strategies that increase the overall efficiency of the transportation system by encouraging a shift from single occupancy vehicles to bike, pedestrian, transit, or carpooling trips. And we have, as I mentioned, we have a TDM program currently in place. And one of the final planning commission recommendations around level of service was to review our existing program and expand that. And we're putting together a grant proposal for a transportation growth management grant to explore that and move forward with implementing that. And with that, I'll turn it back to, I guess, Kurt or Rob.
Just a couple of closing comments here. So the next steps are on your working agenda. You're scheduled to vote on the 2035 TSP at your June 12th meeting. Subsequent to your adoption, the Lane County Board of Commissioners by protocol will adopt the plan. Follow on to that, LCOG will complete their work on the Regional Transportation System Plan preparation and ultimately adoption by the Metro Policy Committee. And after subsequent to that, we move on with initiation of the goals, policies, and projects identified in here. As Rob indicated, for example, the Beltline Facilities Plan is adopted concurrently with adoption of this plan, which begins the environmental process through NEPA for that. There's a lot of material in this and a lot of years that have gone into getting it to this point. We'll do our best to answer questions that you have at this point.
Thank you very much. It was very helpful to go through. This whole presentation was very helpful to me in clarifying where we are. I have Mike and Betty in the queue. Anybody else? Alan, Claire, or Greg, do you want to be in the queue?
No, thank you.
At this time, Mayor.
Okay, great. All right. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. Gentlemen, thank you very much for the presentation, and also thank you very much for the hard years-long work to get this shepherded to this point. I think that all of you do a fantastic job of doing this work to comply with state law, but also to kind of go along with the direction that you get from council and try and put forward what we ask of you in the way of policy direction. So I appreciate that you do an exceptional job of that, of what you're asked. I have questions in 3 major areas, so I will probably need a second round, Mayor. The first one is around CRO stuff. Now, Kurt, I heard you mention that this is largely, and I think, like with quotations, you said this is an internal document and that it's not a statement. This is what we use internally. Did I heard that right? Right, okay. So as CRO is an internal policy direction, it has, at least as I understand, I heard you say that TSP has a series of measures and a series of statistical data that are measured and recorded. But I wonder, the CRO has a different set of standard metrics that it measures success around. Am I correct in assuming that those metrics are different than the ones that are measured in the TSP?
I could answer that by just saying that the CRO is a fairly broad policy statement by the council. This is a transportation element of that, and so certainly there are big connections between climate recovery ordinance goals and transportation. So are there different measures? Certainly the CRO performance measures will be reported out separately from the TSP reporting out on an annual basis or more regularly. I think the point I was trying to make is that the primary connection, arguably, between climate recovery ordinance and the TSP is automobile and the greenhouse gases associated with single occupancy automobile traffic specifically, and that the plan puts in place the opportunity to reduce that.
To reduce is good. One of the CRO goals is a 50% reduction in fossil fuels by 2030, as you know. So is it a part of the TSP to measure our accomplishment towards that council goal with any of the metrics that are gathered?
You jump in?
Yeah, go ahead. I think I know the answer, but
Yes. And
Seems like I've hit a legal point here.
well, no, it's it's not a legal point, but it's if you go to the benches, our performance measures in the benchmarks and when they get measured and at what dates. Some of them are the increase in non-auto trips, which is directly connected to some of the goals that are stated in the CRO. So, and same with, the priority bikeway models, and same with transit mode share. So they are consistent, similar, and supportive, but not identical.
But not aligned, would you say?
No,
they're
they are aligned,
Okay.
but they're not identical. If that helps. It doesn't seem like it does.
I guess I ask those questions because I don't understand that very well, and perhaps I'm sure that some of my other colleagues will ask more illuminating questions about that. There's two other issues I want to get to, and I only have a minute in this round, so I'm going to go with that. Tell me how structurally or we deal with the issue of changing technology in this. I heard you kind of mention it a little bit, Rob, so I want to understand this. I believe that, for example, within 5 years, maybe 8, we'll see regularly driverless cars in the city streets of Eugene. And that we may even see a revolutionary new kind of transportation system with cars that don't require spaces to park them all over in very short order. They're already doing it in Portland. And I only have 3 seconds left. So tell me what we're doing to prepare for that, and I have more questions on that in round 2, please, Mayor.
So remember, this plan, we started working on this in 2010, and I don't remember exactly when people started talking about driverless cars, but I think it was probably just maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. So one of the advantages of now having our own transportation system plan, whereas the current TSP is Transplan, which was a joint TSP with Lane County and Springfield. Now we're going to have our own TSP, and so we have the ability to come back and make updates and amendments to it in a more nimble way than we did in the past. And I guess I would say that, frankly, we have our hands full with with the issues before us right now, and so I think that there's plenty of cities and states around the country that are taking the lead on developing standards and best policies for addressing autonomous vehicles, and I think we can learn from other communities, and then when we're ready, we can start having more discussions about that and figure out what makes the most sense for Eugene.
I have no seconds left. I have several questions, but I guess I'll wait till the next round.
Okay, all right. Betty?
Thank you. The thing I'm hearing the most concern about is level of service. And can you explain the reasons for changing the level of service, making it a lower level all over the city, right?
But and I don't have the clicker, but if you go back to that diagram of trying to balance the land use that's proposed in Envision Eugene with a level of service or the amount of delay that people are experiencing on the transportation system, and the capital improvements necessary to maintain that level of service. So if you want a lower level of service, you either have to accept less growth, or you have to accept larger capital improvements, which can in themselves can be very disruptive if you're widening roads or building new roads. And the level of service, it's really measuring the delay at intersections for vehicular traffic during a peak hour period. So it's not so for the majority of the time on the majority of the system, people aren't going to experience the delay by simply lowering the level of service from D to E. We've lowered it to F in the downtown area probably 3 years ago, and it hasn't changed the experience people have downtown.
No, I understand that, and I don't think it's the delay that's the big concern. I think some people think that the idea is to make it possible to do more building in unsuitable places, maybe.
And that's not the intent at all.
But it would make it possible. The traffic analysis then wouldn't be the same if someone wants to build something huge out at the edge of town.
Well, they'd have to meet a lower, right, they'd meet a lower, instead of meeting a level of service D, they'd meet a little lower level of service. So they may not have to mitigate, they wouldn't have to mitigate.
Wouldn't have to mitigate.
Right. But if they had a significant impact, they'd have to mitigate to maintain that level of service E.
I think the Amazon crossing building has brought this up with a lot of people.
But it wouldn't have made any difference for that project. This change wouldn't have made any difference for that project. They still met the level of service D for that project in the analysis that was submitted and approved.
And my next question is, well, if we're going to have, this plan has complete streets everywhere, that means there are bike lanes everywhere, right?
No, it means that bicyclists are accommodated. It doesn't mean that there's necessarily a bike lane. They can be accommodated different ways. Traffic calming on a residential street makes it safer for cyclists as well.
Like stop signs, which I know you don't like.
And to address that, one of the concerns we had was from a resident who lives local unimproved street tucked away in the Crest Drive neighborhood, and he was under the assumption that we were going to make him build sidewalks in front of his house and that sort of thing. And that is not the intent of the complete streets element of this. The specific, what we call the urban standards projects, which are the ones that add sidewalks and curb and gutter, and in some cases bicycle facilities to street, those individual projects are identified in the plan itself. So that's the universe of projects, of streets that are proposed to have sidewalks added to them and the other elements of urban standards.
Now, Crest Drive's a good example of a place where there was not room for bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides because of what's already there. And there are lots of places like that, I think, where the buildings that are already there make it impossible to do what you call complete streets. Then a specific question on East Amazon, which is near me. How are you going to get room for a protected bike lane?
Where the plan is to remove parking on the street.
Oh, that'll make people happy.
So, and in fact, we're meeting with the board of Southeast Neighbors, I think tonight, to discuss the project. But there's been considerable neighborhood outreach for the project. When we mailed postcards to people, we made it clear that we would be looking at removing parking. So we try to be really explicit with the residents and property owners in the corridor, that parking removal is something consideration.
So there won't be any parking on East Amazon then?
We may construct a parking bay in a location that's the furthest from any side street, because we looked at most of the residences on the street are not very far from side streets that have parking on them. But there's one section where the houses are a little further away, so we're going to look at building a parking bay by taking out part of the planting strip, which, like we've done those around town when we've added bike lanes. For example, we built one on Willamette Street around 22nd by the Silver Lace Apartments. So that's something we're looking at doing.
So you're talking about bike lanes on both sides?
So there'll be a two-way protected bikeway on the west side of East Amazon.
I see.
Right, and the travel lane will be up against the curb. The main reason we decided to do this on West Amazon instead of East Amazon is that, on East Amazon instead of West Amazon, is that East Amazon has a setback sidewalk, so there's something that buffers people walking from the street, but West Amazon has mostly a curbside sidewalk, so if we remove parking there, then you would have vehicular traffic right up against the sidewalk.
I think it'd be interesting on pizza night.
We've done our best to reach out to Hideaway Bakery about that. Unfortunately, it's been a little bit of a struggle because we haven't really heard from them, but we've tried to reach out to them.
Okay. Do emission standards have any place in this? Well, they do in the CRO, I think, but.
Well, I think yes, but when you talk about standards, I think the plan isn't.
Or inspections.
Pardon me? No.
Inspections of automobiles.
There's nothing in the plan about
I didn't think so.
emission standards, no.
But if you had emission standards, you'd have to have car inspections, wouldn't you?
Yes, I suppose, yeah.
I suppose. Bridges over Amazon Creek are coming in 2018, and you're planning for a new bridge over the river, right? Over the Willamette? Yeah.
Oh, right. The local arterial bridge as part of the Beltline project would be a multimodal bridge that would have walking, biking, and vehicle lanes on it.
Any chance of stopping that bridge? Just a question. That's not a real question, I guess. When you talk about getting rid of single occupancy cars, that's. How can you do that? If you use bicycles instead and buses, obviously, but how could you get carpooling when people don't live that close together or aren't going in the same place?
I don't think it's a matter of getting rid of them. It's providing people with the options of alternatives and making alternatives more attractive and easier to use.
If we could work on a complete bus system, it would be good. And I used all my time for once.
Okay. All right, thank you. Alan, you're up.
Yeah, one of the benefits of the multimodal bridge at the Beltline is that if we are going to have a bus rapid transit MX line that goes east-west, especially on the northern part of the growing part of the city, we're not going to do it in the Beltline. That would cost too much and it wouldn't be very effective. It's going to have to be on the surface streets, and there are lots of ways to do that, and I think that's a good plan. But problem is it dead ends right at the river because there's no way to get across the river unless you put in that multimodal bridge, and it becomes an MX bridge, a bike bridge, a pedestrian bridge, and a local arterial bridge. So it's a multimodal bridge, and it has many benefits to it. Some people think of that as increasing the width of Beltline from Springfield to West 11th, 11 lanes or whatever the number is, keeps increasing every time I hear it. But really, it's really about being able to facilitate different kinds of modes of transportation and also getting the local people off of that street, reducing congestion, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and reducing people's time and reducing their cost of driving, and moving them onto that little arterial would be a much better plan, I think. And besides, the other two bridges need to be rebuilt because of seismic issues within the next 10 years. So they're going to be rebuilt regardless, because as we need 30,000 bridges in the United States need to be rebuilt. My comments associated with this, and I'll probably need a second round. I do very much appreciate this iteration of the TSP. It's such a vast improvement over the last TSP in terms of meeting the transportation rule goal of decreasing the reliance on automobile and increasing transportation choices, meaning increasing the modal split, which is a jargon term, meaning more bike, ped, and transit use. And in this plan, it's about a 50-50 split in dollars spent, although most of the alternative transportation dollars are actually spent in those 6 transit projects. But all in all, it's a very dramatic change from the last TSP. And so I also appreciate the lengthy memos that staff put together on the CRO and Vision Zero. Those were helpful. There's a lot to like about this new TSP, but we still have a lot of work to do. The Vision Zero work group is with citizens is underway in crafting a Vision Zero action plan. And with respect to climate change, to meet our CRO, Climate Recovery Ordinance goals, namely the 50% reduction in fossil fuel community-wide by 2030, fossil fuel use, and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions 7.6% annually, will be a very big effort on the part of the city and this community. And I'll point out that the Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee is underway looking at better communication of our progress in meeting the goals, updating our CF, and engaging the community in helping meet the overall goals. But I'll need a second round, probably a third.
Okay. All right. Mike, you're up for a second round. Oh, wait. Hang on. Let me give it to Emily, who hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you, Mayor. My comments are probably a little off the track here, but they're important to me. I would like to see more protected bike lanes. I don't feel that biking on the street is safe. I don't like to do it, and I do like to ride my bike. I'm fine riding on a protected lane. If we want to get more kids and old people riding, it really needs to be safer. I don't think 12 new bike lanes that are protected is enough. I live on a street that has mixed bikes and cars, and so people ride on the sidewalks. I use the sidewalks, and they surprise me. If I step sideways, it's a crash. So I'd like to have bikes off the sidewalks, but there's nowhere safe to have them. I talked to some merchants this morning, and they're very, very much wanting that protected bike lane from Kincaid to Lincoln because people are not coming downtown. I've been having interviews with student journalism majors, and it's the first time they've been downtown. They've never been to Kesey Square. They've never been to the Barnlight or Theo's, and there's no easy way for them to come. So that could help with our downtown revitalization. And I'd like to see that moved up from 2019. I think that we need to drastically increase our mass transit. I was in Portland and Seattle 2 weekends ago and spent a half an hour in each city in bumper-to-bumper traffic for a 5 to 8 minute drive. It was frustrating, increased my need for mental health, and it was really bad for the environment, all that gas usage. So I'd like to see a lot more money and attention to buses. Bikes are great, but it rains a lot here, and some people are willing to put on their rain gear, and a lot of people aren't. So they're going to go back to the car. Again, a light rail, buses. I know this isn't in our plan, but I think it really should be. Sunday streets are a ton of fun. They don't increase bike safety. We don't shut down the streets for people to ride their bikes. Yeah, they get out and they ride their bikes, but it's one day of play. I don't really think it helps. I'm not saying to get rid of it, but I don't really like it being put on the side of we're promoting bike traffic. The downtown bikes, I have some questions as to who's paying for them. People that can afford them, they probably have a bike. I'm out of time.
Do you want another round?
Not at this point.
Do you want us to answer any of those?
Yes,
questions?
please.
Yes, please.
13th Avenue, the protected bikeway, we'd love to build it sooner. We are not able to because of the the process with the Oregon Department of Transportation. So we're bummed out about that, but that's the soonest we're able to construct it. The bike share, we will at some point look at, this is an issue nationally, is how to make bike share accessible to lower income people or even working class people. So that's something we're sensitive to, and that we'll be working with Social Bikes, which is the bike share operator, on that issue and looking at how to enable that kind of access. And I think part of it will likely be by working with social services agencies and affordable housing providers.
Can I just ask a follow-up clarification question to hers in terms of the relationship between our transportation system plan and the moving ahead project of lane transit? Because that seems to me to get at her question around buses.
So we identify the corridor, the moving ahead corridors are identified as projects, as frequent transit or MX projects on the capital projects list in the TSP. And the TSP, one of the goals of the TSP is to triple the mode share for transit in Eugene. So I think that, the challenge is how to get there. You might be aware there's the transportation bill in the legislature that an earlier draft of it had a new payroll tax that would generate significant more revenue for Lane Transit District. And that would be one way to pay for additional service or additional capital for projects in Eugene.
Thank you. All right, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I would say it's my opinion that you can spend all the money we can get our hands on and work forever in order to try and decrease the demand for single occupancy trips. And I think it will meet with very little success. I think that demand is innate in the character of our culture in the West, and I think it's innate in our demand for the lifestyle locally. And I think looking at the problem at trying to decrease the demand is going to be very expensive and not effective. But I was kind of shocked with your answer there a little bit. I understand it entirely, that essentially we're going to let other cities lead when it comes to autonomous vehicles. I would suggest that there might be another reason, and it's because policymakers haven't said to you yet, you need to be ahead of the curve, and we need to lead with this. We're in a community that has an electric vehicle manufacturer. We're in a community that is trying to lead, at least the West, if not the country, in the technology that we develop in our downtown core. And I suggest perhaps we're the perfect place to lead on this issue. I would suggest that when it comes to the demand for individual occupant trips, there's nothing wrong with that. It's the vehicle they're in and what they do with it the rest of the time that's the problem. That's the efficiency issue that if we're planning right, we can fix, because all vehicles, all cars have something in common, every one of them, that 95% of the time or better, they're sitting still wherever they are, on the side of the road, in the driveway, in a parking lot. 95% of the time they're sitting there. And when they don't have to be sitting there anymore, then we have a disruption that can address the goals we're talking about around CRO and other things that don't have to cost anywhere near as much. Instead of buses, a fleet of vehicles that is constantly in motion, and you can bring individually to your home to pick you up, take you where you need to go, and then it's off to take care of somebody else that you don't own and it's public. Fixes all of those problems. And that's why Google's putting in so much money. And that's why these folks are having the fights we see in the paper over this, because they know that's what's coming. Again, I would say from my perspective, as someone whose job it is to direct policy, I think we ought to be leading on this. I think we ought to be preparing right now, but I appreciate you've done the job we asked you to do, and very well. I would like one more round, please.
Alan?
Yeah, transportation actually accounts for about a third of our greenhouse gas emissions. And so if we don't aggressively address transportation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, there's no way we're going to meet our state or our local CRO goals in any way. So the main plan for addressing transportation is the TSP. So the key and maybe the only plan that we have or document that we have to address the linkage between the CRO and Vision Zero and the spending on transportation projects is the TSP. So the TSP is the place to address that stuff. Specific to the memo that staff put around on CRO, what it tells us is that the TSP is at least consistent with the direction that we need to go in order to meet the goals of the council that was unanimously adopted. What we need to now to do is actually take that to the next step and make the TSP a plan that tells us what specifically the actions, programs, and projects we need to implement to actually meet our CRO goals and our Vision Zero goals. As it stands now, the TSP doesn't do that. And the TSP doesn't tell us how close we're going to get or whether or not we're going to meet our CRO goals if we implemented the TSP projects. So in fact, there's actually no quantification of any of the project's reduction in fossil fuel use or the amount of greenhouse gases that it reduces in the plan. When we did the scenario planning a little while ago at the MPC, which was required by state law, we used a tool called Green Steps, which allowed us to quantify all this stuff. So the tool exists and it's getting better all the time. From that scenario planning exercise that we did for this whole entire MPC community, which is the metro area, one of the things that came out of that is we probably need to triple, maybe quadruple the amount of bike, ped, and transit that we are using that's in the current TSP. And one of the sections of the TSP that you pulled out, and I'll just read it, a wide variety of additional measures will likely be needed to meet the Climate Recovery Ordinance's 50% fossil fuel reduction goal, including additional investments in active transportation, bicycle, walking, and transit, fleet fuel changes to pricing structure of fossil fuels, insurance, parking, additional management of parking supply, and additional education and marketing efforts. These additional measures are best accomplished through an externally directed regulation such as amending our land use code and require more parking, bike parking, or through amendments to the city's current transportation demand program and regulations and so forth. So I guess there's quite a lot of work that's been identified here. And the question is, how exactly and how much of these things are we going to need to meet the CRO goals and the Vision Zero goals? And how would we do them? And what are the costs? And what are the benefits of the actions? And when will we do them? And so that's, I'll take that up in my third round.
Okay.
So briefly, we're working with the Lane Council of Governments and ODOT to get another model run to get a better understanding of the greenhouse gas implications of the latest TSP. Yeah.
Cool.
That's right.
Claire or Greg, do you need a round?
Sure, Mayor.
Okay, Claire, you're up.
So I just want to compliment staff on addressing those three major areas that we got public feedback around the Vision Zero, the CRO, and the Beltline improvements. I appreciated that information. And I also appreciate Councilor Zelenka's comments regarding the multimodal bridge over next to Beltline. I think that is getting kind of swept up in this idea of expanding Beltline, and it's really not. It's about increasing accessibility for local folks who right now have to use Beltline to get between neighborhoods in that area, and this would ease that up very well. And I'm also very glad to see the extension of the bike path up into that part of Santa Clara. So I just wanted to make those comments right now. I don't have any big questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else? Emily, do you need another round? All right.
I think I'm good, Mayor, for the moment.
Okay. Sounds good. And so we turn it back to Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. While we're not incorporating in this plan any kind of major disruptive, revolutionary kind of crazy stuff I was just mentioning before, we are kind of sticking with the standard sort of approach to how we plan for transportation. And so one of my questions is, what are we doing to address, characterize for me how this plan addresses the need for capacity increases, if you would, please.
Well, one way is by identifying specific projects that are pinch points on the system, like Beltline from River Road to Coburg Road, Beltline from Roosevelt to West 11th. There's some smaller projects like Barger from Breslin to Beltline, and Martin Luther King from, I think it might be Parkway West to Coburg Road. So it identifies specific projects where there's concerns or where the modeling showed that.
I guess I'm asking, how much and where do we enhance capacity?
I think it's just a matter of running through the project and seeing, again, at its most basic level, this is a plan that integrates land use and the demands on the transportation system to bring them into sync. So I guess I probably could not recite from the list of 264 projects which ones, but you will, as you go through that, you will find additional lanes on roadway segments. You'll find by inference the fact that you put in place a model that makes it easier, more convenient, more readily accessible to use active transportation, including mass transit, that the net effect of that is enhancement to the remainder of the users. So I think it's a combination of things. I think it was taking a look at the broad brush of what do we see happening in the Eugene metro area over 20 years in terms of growth, development, expansion, traffic demand through countless modeling efforts, and what do you put in place to meet that given the level of service and other goals.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So what you're saying, I'm hearing you say, is this is designed to match up with Envision Eugene pretty well and try and help capacity while at the same time channeling some other alternatives for demand, maybe, but it uses the same 34,000 population increase as its base, as does Envision Eugene? Yes?
That's correct.
Okay. We had PSU come back and tell us that the population is likely to be 40,000, a little bit thereafter. And I made this nifty little thing for my colleagues here, which I'll pass out. On Friday, the newspaper showed us that the first-year report card of our population growth is back, and that what we had between 15 and 16 was 1.88% growth in that year. This is extrapolate out, project forward, 1.88% growth every year during the project year from 15 to 35. And it shows us not with an increase of 34,000 or 40,000, but with 1.88% increase every year, we see that in the planning period, we'll see an increase of 73,000 people, more than double. I have long advocated that I believe, based on what we see in national reports of where people are migrating and moving to in the country, based on what we see from common sense with regard to climate refugees, that we should be calculating for larger numbers. So tell me about the flexibility of the TSP. Tell me about if we see this, if we see last year's reality continue forward and at least double the population that we're planning for, how do we adjust for that with regard to capacity?
I think I might just reiterate maybe some different words than Rob used earlier on a similar theme, and that to the extent we will now have a Eugene-specific transportation system plan, we have much greater flexibility to roll with changing demographics, changing projections. As the work began on this project, not quite 10 years ago, you take the snapshot in time and use the best available information you have with which to begin building the plan. And I think everyone fully expects that there will be a continual updating process to that and a timely readoption as that occurs. Whether it's around population factors, whether it's around driverless vehicles, whether it's a complete revolution in the type of fuels used, or whatever the case might be. But I think the flexibility derives from the fact that it is a Eugene-specific document, and we're not ultimately going to be relying upon surrounding neighbors for modifications that go with it.
So do you recommend a regular check back to amend?
My advice,
Like envision Eugene?
I guess my suggestion is that there will be a regular check-in, and whether it's driven by the realities that you're projecting or some other factors. I think this and all of the big world of transportation planning documents are regularly reviewed and updated.
By council?
You know, not to nitpick on it, but for example, the regional transportation plan that we mentioned earlier and the regional transportation system plan have horizons. The city-specific plans, I believe, are not mandated to a specific updating period, and so if a majority of the council wish to update the plan every year, God forbid, it's not precluded. But
well, I'm just saying, how do we get it to reality when what we're planning seems like a little bit off, and that's not on you, that's on us. So I'm saying, what should we do? And I just want to say thank you for putting up with my harsh questioning, because I'm really kind of talking to the colleagues who set policy, and you guys are doing well to answer our questions on this.
I mean, just one more thing is that there are some ambitious projects in here that would increase capacity or address capacity concerns, like the 3 Beltline projects. I mean, that's a big lift to implement all those.
May I just for 2 seconds here say, I know the legislature isn't going to pay for half of it, and they're going to ask us to pay for the other half, and there's no way we're doing $100 million on that, number one. And number two, I've sat on the Beltline Steering Committee for 9 years now, and of the 5 original plans, the top 3 that would address capacity, the bottom 2 being fix it just a little and do nothing, the top 3 have been removed. So I don't know if I agree characterizing saying that we'll be able to address capacity much with what we have planned that the legislature doesn't seem to be looking to fund.
So I'll just interject here that as a counselor, you always have the right and privilege to ask for a work session and an update on this plan. And so that may be something you want to exercise.
I was also going to mention that Envision Eugene will be here on June 12th, and that might be another good time to just talk about how we're going to update and stay connected. The Envision Eugene process has included transportation staff, and likewise the TSP has included planning staff from day one, so they are very coordinated. And
this may come.
Yeah, I wrote that.
Right. Okay, I have Alan and then Emily.
So, Mike, all the more reason to pedal the metal on increasing choice, bike, ped, and transit.
That's one option, brother.
Yeah, that's 3. The reason I read that paragraph earlier was because from the TSP is that it prompts the question about all these different policies and programs and projects, and prompts the question of exactly how much we will need of these things to meet our CRO goals and our Vision Zero goals. And how would we do them? What are they? What are the costs and benefits of these actions, and when will we do them? And to answer these questions, we need to take the TSP to the next level. And we need to identify the strategies, quantify their impacts, and create an implementation plan to meet our goals, especially the CRO goals. Many cities around the country are already doing this, and we can borrow from their work. We have the tools like Green Steps to help us quantify it. And then while we don't necessarily have all this expertise on staff because we're pretty lean and mean, we do have, to do all this work, we can hire that. There are experts and consultants that can help us with this. So what I'd like to see us do is actually conditionally pass the TSP, and then and that allows our partners to work on and get the regional transportation plan done, because this one gets smushed into that, and then get to work over the next year on creating a CRO implementation plan and a Vision Zero implementation plan. The Vision Zero implementation plan is already underway. CRO one's, I think, hasn't really been started. So before we come back for approval, and I think it got bumped from the 12th to the 26th for a TSB to get approved, I intend to craft a motion that will direct the city manager to get these 2 plans done and added to our Eugene TSP over the next year. So that's where I'm heading with this. Since I have a couple more seconds, had a question about level of service indicators. We have level of service indicators for automobiles. Do we have them for bike, transit, and walking? And since those are growing, if we don't have level of service indicators for those, how are we going to measure our success on those, like we do with, or don't do with automobiles?
We don't, but there was that item that the Planning Commission added to the TSP to look beyond the level service metrics as part of updating the TIA element of the code. So that might be an opportunity.
Yeah, I saw that, and that kind of prompted my question, which is I think we do actually need to get similar things for all four modes. We've been very auto-centric, but we also need to beef up our game in terms of our ability to quantify impacts for reductions in fossil fuel use and greenhouse gas on all of those different modes, as well as get to the level of service indicators. So making what we're doing on the bike ped transit side equal to what we're doing on automobiles.
Part of the challenge is that the level of service for vehicles is based on delay, and the levels, there have been attempts made around the country on developing multimodal level of service standards, but they're much more labor intensive to develop. Like we did that for the Willamette Street project, and a lot of it looks at like what the user experience is on a particular facility. So I think the way that, to some extent, the way we're addressing that is trying to create an interconnected network for walking and biking and having the highest quality facilities.
Right. Instead of maybe delay, they're more on, can you do it?
And how does it feel? How does it feel? So
what's the quality of the experience?
Right. So like Coburg Road has a lot of sidewalks that are curbside. So that's, it doesn't feel great to walk along that street. And we don't have specific projects identified in the TSP to set sidewalks back from the street, but that's an issue that we're looking at through the moving ahead process.
Good example. Thanks.
Emily?
Thank you. The first page of attachment D, there's also a possibility that the Beltline bridges over the Willamette River could be replaced. Didn't you say it was only the multimodal one that would be built new? So is replacing also building new?
So as Councilor Zelenka mentioned, the Beltline bridges aren't seismically safe,
right.
And so it's likely that they will need to be replaced in order to create seismically sound bridges.
Are they in the plan?
They're not, because that is more of a maintenance type initiative for ODOT.
So would that be in capital improvements?
It's more of an ODOT. It's just not a project we identify in the plan, but that doesn't, like the I-5 bridge over the Willamette River that ODOT replaced 8 years ago or so. I mean, I don't believe that was in Transplan.
Okay.
Just to clarify from an MPC perspective, so our transplant in Springfield and Lane counties and Coburgs all get pushed into the RTP, and ODOTs do too. So that project would actually show up in the regional transportation plan that gets approved by RTP, but not necessarily in our TSP.
Thank you, Alan. I want to thank you very, very much. I mean, this is a huge book and a huge amount of work, and I'm really impressed by it. And I'd also like to emphasize to everybody, it's a plan, and we need to move forward now. And there are things that we will change and would like to change, but I encourage us to move on so we can get to the next plans and then come back to implementing them with possible changes. It's my personal feeling that single vehicle fossil fuel use will kill us. I don't think we're looking far enough ahead. It's hotter every summer. When I drove in Seattle or Portland, bumper to bumper, talk about frustration. If they can do it, can't we wait another 20 seconds to get through an intersection? But I think we need to start planning, to start seriously thinking about a light rail or some other mass transit that comes often and is easy to use and continues at night. It's a real hardship for people without night and weekend mass transit. I'd also like to see reports on how greenhouse gases are being reduced during our implementation of the transportation plan. I don't think we need to insist on that right now, but I really want to know how it's changing. I think our CRO needs to be put up higher on our list. I don't think we need to go back and do it on every one of these projects, even though I would like that. But I would like us to seriously pay attention to that in the future. And I would like the CRO plan to be started that Alan mentioned. And actually, I agree with everything Alan said, and I hope you will put 2 times all of that. Thank you again for a tremendous amount of work, and I look forward to working together to implement it in even better ways. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank all of you. And I know Mike has one more comment that he wants to make, but I just want to do a time check because we have a little bit of discussion we need to have around the Ward 4 selection process. And so I don't know how much time we're going to need for that, but we might need 15 minutes. We might need to extend by 10 in order to do that. Does that make sense? So, Mike, if you really have to ask your question and you can do it in less than a minute, I'll give it to you.
Quick comment. I was just going to say, along the lines of what I was saying before, is about relative price. And it goes directly to your comment. We spent $100 million, most of which was federal dollars, just on the West Eugene leg of MX, right? Roughly, more or less, $100 million. For $100 million, you could buy 10,000 electric vehicles, publicly owned, that could travel around town and individually transport people, and then there'd be no need to park them. And when they drive themselves, and you can order them up with your app, which, by the way, isn't that many years away, just a few, then it remakes the transportation system. And that's what I'm saying I think we should lead on, is creating that reality. Thank you, Mayor.
But then we'll have all those cars. We'll need bigger roads.
Thank you very much. It was really, you have just done incredible work explaining a very complicated subject and detailed subject, long-term planning. We punted you, and you had to wait for another meeting to come up, and so I really appreciate your tolerance and patience and clarity. So thank you very, very much for that. Okay, could we have a motion to extend the meeting by 10 minutes?
Motion to extend 10 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
1, 2, 3. Claire? Greg?
I vote yes.
4. Greg? We lost him anyway. We had 4 in favor. That gives us enough, right? Opposed? 1. Greg? Okay. Let's just extend so we can finish this conversation and move on to the next. Hopefully not take too long to do it.
You can't get elected issue.
I'd say yes.
Okay, good. All right, take it away, Beth.
Yeah, just looking for direction today on the variables in the proposed process that we sent out a few days ago. We just recirculated. We could just kind of go through it bullet by bullet and let us know if you have any changes or.
Say yes, like.
Or just say yes.
There's another question on here other than yes, no.
And if there are, I'll start a queue if people want to.
Could we just go around and say what we think
I
about
think that's a good idea.
each of these and without talking a lot about it?
Yes, that sounds fine.
Without talking a lot.
Good luck
about
to
it.
you, Betty.
Go for it,
First
Betty.
one, take them one at a time. I say do not interview all candidates. Find out if there are some that no one wants to interview, then we don't use their time, waste their time and ours.
Okay. Mike, you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, well, are you going point by point or the whole thing?
One point by point.
Well, actually, maybe could we just go through the whole thing? You want to just go through your whole list?
What do you think of each bullet?
What you think of each bullet point?
I thought it would be better to go point by point.
All right, fine.
We'll be here.
What do the rest of you think?
That's fine.
Do it either
Just
way.
do the first point.
We're going to be here a while, but okay, yes. Interview only those candidates that reach a sufficient threshold of votes.
Good.
Okay.
Must be brief.
Okay, all right. Alan?
I'm very good at that.
6. I would, out of respect, and Interview them all.
Okay.
Right.
Emily?
I would prefer not to waste people's time if they don't have a chance.
Okay. All right. Claire?
My original thought was because there were a limited number of applicants that we should interview them all, but I don't have a super strong feeling about that.
Okay. And Greg, I'm assuming, Greg, are you still there? I think we've lost him. Okay. All right. Round 2, 30-minute interview time slots.
Well, what was the decision?
Well, I've got 1, 2, 3 saying no, don't interview them all, and you saying yes, and Claire going either way. So I think it's don't interview them all.
So that means we'd have to do an interview ballot.
You have to
I
do a
do
ballot.
have a ballot. I can pass it around.
Looky here.
And,
Okay.
Next one. shall we
Okay.
go ahead?
Perfect. All right. Yes.
30 minutes, that sounds fine. You do need to allow a couple of minutes between. 5 minutes between, maybe.
Okay.
And, yeah, that's it. Be sure that you have water for them.
Okay. Mike?
Fine.
Okay. Alan?
Yeah, 30 minutes is good. 5 minute in between. I don't think we need a 30-minute break.
Okay.
At 30.
There's a 30-minute midpoint break. I think just 5 minutes in between each one and get them done, especially if we're not going to do 6.
Yeah.
Okay. Emily?
If we do 6, are we going to do them all on the same night?
You voted against doing 6 already.
Well,
No, they all could get.
Well, I
they all
guess you
get a
could
yes.
ballot. You could. I guess that's true. You could. Never mind.
My concern is that people later in the process will be able to, if it's webcast, will be able to look at the previous applicants and change what they say. So I would like to do something to prevent the earlier speakers from knowing what the later speakers say.
silence.
we did with the boards and commissions, we recorded it, but we didn't broadcast it. And we can do the same thing with this.
And they would be out in the other room.
Right.
They wouldn't hear.
Okay. Claire, 30-minute interviews?
Yeah, that's fine. I agree with Alan. We don't need a 30-minute break.
Okay, perfect. All right, next one. Opening prepared statement?
Yes, I think there should be an opening statement. We should tell them how long. I think let them say what they want to say would be my feeling, and give them 3 minutes.
So are you opposed to these candidates' interest in serving on the council and contribution they would make as a member?
No, I think they've already said things like that in their written material.
Okay.
I wouldn't limit what they can say what they want to say. If they want to be stupid and say this is not enough time to say what I want to say, for part of their time, let them do it.
Okay. All right, Mike?
God, I hate doing this, but I agree with Betty.
To all your candidates.
And except if we were going to have some kind of guidance to them about what to say, it would not be either of these two.
No, I wouldn't.
For me, it would be, why do you think you match the people of Ward 4 as a good representative, and or why do you think you would be the good person completing George Polling's term?
No.
So you don't agree, Betty? That's really odd. Anyway, to finish my point, that the people in Ward 4 voted for George Polling, and they expressed their will. So, in my opinion, the candidate ought to match the people's will as expressed at the ballot box.
Okay.
And so that candidate could then
talk
say,
about that later?
why? Excuse me, Betty, but I'm trying to answer the question we were asked. Okay? And I believe that that's the place where they can express why they fit best at the opening with their own statement.
All right. So, all right. Alan?
I don't mind having Mike's question be in there too. I think that's not the only question. There's many questions. I think, why do you want to be on the council? What do you help to bring to the council? What's your issues? And how does that fit with the ward that you're in? Again, councilors are elected by their ward, but they serve the entire city in the interest of the city. So it's not as parochial as it might seem. So, I think maybe it's just a broader question. other questions, though, the written questions that we had, almost all of them were answered, or I can't remember now. I don't have that packet with me. The written questions that you had listed and the ones that were already answered were pretty much a good overlap. There were maybe a couple that were, maybe we should add a supplement to have them answer in writing. So, or did they all get covered? I thought they were all good questions. I think there was 11 of them.
Yeah, they did not all get covered. That was, the questions that I think I sent out, I think we're talking about are the ones we used for the Ward 6 recruitment. And that was actually a compilation of questions that counselors had submitted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the exception of the first one, which is an opening statement one. I thought I would request that the ones that weren't covered in the application, they asked and to be written or responded to in writing, so we have those before, and then we can then have them do their opening statement to cover all these different aspects of it, with maybe some broader definition of what they should cover.
We would probably want to talk then about timeline for that. If we're still planning the interviews for the 14th, what kind of time would you want us to give the candidates who are chosen for interviews to?
Well, as soon as you know who we're going to interview, I'd send, with their notification, I'd send them those supplemental questions.
So we're still on are they doing an opening prepared statement, and is it a free for all? They can say whatever, or
We haven't been all the way around
this.
this.
To a fault.
We haven't. Yeah, we did. We haven't kind of completed the circle on the opening prepared statement. So we can. Yes, you're right. We've jumped to the questions.
I think these two topics have already been covered in the written questions. I would not like to see any more written questions. And I think anybody who really wants to be counselor is going to watch the recording of this meeting, and it gave them a whole lot of hints.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Claire?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I'm fine with asking them to do a statement that indicates their interest in serving on the council and what contribution they would make. But I also agree with what Councilor Semple just said, that, and to Mike's point as well, that, if they are serious about this appointment, they will speak to what their interests are in serving the constituents of the ward, as well as what their contribution would be as a council member. So partly, I think maybe not asking them specifically those questions and seeing what they offer would also be instructive in terms of what they would bring to the city council and what their interests are.
Okay, perfect. So I think we have a consensus, open-ended, yes.
Mayor?
Oh, Greg is back. Okay, yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
No worries. I concur with what's been said earlier. And reading through the packet and looking at the applications, I don't know about other people, but I think that there is a clear demarcation between those people who have put in time and effort in answering the questions and, completing the application in a written form that, kind of moves me to, I think there is a tier 1 and there's a tier 2. And I believe that, we don't need any more written responses. I think I would want to see what people have to say in person and kind of get that opening statement of really why do you want to be on city council versus, I think everything else has been extremely thorough in the lead up in the application process. So
All right.
there's my 2 cents.
Okay, so then that leads to the next question about each counselor submitting one question. Is that called for now? Betty?
I would prefer.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Mayor, I don't think so.
Oh.
I mean,
Right. Greg,
am I out of the queue now?
out of the queue. You're now at the end.
Okay.
So just
All right.
turn. Okay, Betty.
Okay. I don't like the idea of submitting a question in advance, and I would like the opportunity to ask a different question of different counselors, depending on their experience and what they have said in the written material, something that I think that I would like to know about that person.
Okay. All right. Mike?
Whatever your name is.
Whatever your name is, whoever you are.
You have the ability to ask different counselors different questions, but you should have candidate. You should have a set of questions that you're going to ask of each candidate, because if you simply choose the questions based on the candidate, then you're opening yourselves up to some kind of claim, depending on what your questions are, of discrimination or something else. So there's certainly no problem with what Betty's talking about of, well, this candidate has this particular expertise, I want to delve into that, or this particular experience. But my recommendation is you have a standard set of, it could be 4, it could be 6, it could be 8 questions that you're asking of all the candidates. And then depending on their particular, either their answers to those questions or their particular experience, you follow up. That's the way when we hire people, we do it.
Thank you. My answer then is that if we are going to have standard questions, that they come from counselors and each one gets to submit one.
Okay. All right. Alan?
I agree.
Okay. Emily?
Agree with which person?
We have with
The man to the left of the mayor.
Thank you. I see the point about being fair, and that's really important to me. So does the follow-up question mean each counselor could then ask yet another question?
That would depend on how the mayor wants to conduct the meeting, but the way we have done this in hiring processes in the city is we'd have standard questions that get asked, and then the people on the panel can then follow up with, okay, here's one additional question. So the answer could certainly be yes if the mayor wants to conduct it that way.
She won't be there.
It could be that way, or it could be that you allow them, if they want to say add any other information on their own. That's the other way of doing it. So
I won't get to the clarifying part. I'm a little concerned we're going to run out of time. Are we going to give them a 3-minute answer on each one, because they better be good at that?
2.
Well, not
Yeah.
3 minutes.
2 minutes.
Okay. I like the chance to be asked a follow-up question, but I'm much more concerned about being fair.
Okay. All right. Claire?
I'm fine with each counselor submitting a question as long as staff is going through them and letting us know if there are duplicative ones, so we can circle back and change those up.
Okay, great. And Greg?
I think I'll go along with the flow on this one, Mayor.
All right, great. Okay, and then we've really discussed the follow-up questions. That's clear. You can have a time for follow-up questions, and those don't need to be written in advance. Am I understanding that correctly?
They're related to what.
They're related to what's been said, right? Okay. And then the question of.
Kind of begs the question. Betty said, but the mayor won't be there. What's the format that we're going to use? Is it just going to be the counselors?
You would have to conduct it since the mayor won't be there.
The mayor doesn't vote on this.
You won't be there, isn't that right? You're going to.
The problem was the conflict, so we'll discuss that. My calendar. Let's not.
If you were there,
we'll figure that out.
If you aren't.
May I interrupt?
Yeah.
This? If I recall correctly, I don't think that Mayor Piercy was involved in when I was selected as counselor in 2013. I don't know whether that was because she was absent from the table, but my understanding that it was this is a council decision and that the mayor was not to be involved in that.
Right. I just assumed I would preside over the meeting, but
So I can clarify. The appointment is no different than any other appointment. The mayor does not vote except in case of a tie, And if all of you show up, there are only 7 of you, there won't be a tie. If only 6 of you show up and the mayor was here, then under the charter, the mayor has the right to vote.
Well, we're not voting on that meeting anyway.
Correct.
Well, that's the next
So
question.
the question is really, do we want the mayor to facilitate or just the council president?
If the mayor's not there, then, I think Betty said it, as council president, Alan, you would be running the meeting.
The mayor should, though.
If the mayor's there, she would.
If the mayor's there, she would be
can't
running the
express
meeting.
an opinion
It's a
or vote.
council meeting, so the mayor would be running
As
it.
a facilitator.
Yes.
Right, okay. All right, so we're clear on that.
Preference
So
voting's
the
next.
next one is a question about how to vote.
I like the idea of preference voting.
Really?
All right, Mike?
I don't know why we're creating a new system for how we get from the start to the finish in the detail parts of it.
They know then.
Yeah, no. When we get to the, and the reason is because when we get to the end, we're not changing the manner in which we're voting. The manner in which we'll appoint is going to be the same, and by law it has to be the same as we always do.
You mean a motion?
A motion at council
So
and
it's
the
a-
manner of discussion under the governed by Robert's rules. That's the manner in which we're going to appoint somebody. So let's do this the same manner we always have rather than create a whole new system to just complicate it.
So you're about 99% correct, Mike. It will
Oh,
be.
I'm usually more than that, Glenn.
It will be the same, but
Thanks for
it's
the
because of the charter. The charter says how the council makes decisions. It's a majority vote. Now, how you get to the point where the council president makes the motion, you can say,
can do
we want to use preference voting, we want to use regular. In the end, Alan gets to make the motion, and if somebody doesn't like the name that Alan puts in there, anybody has the right to move to amend and change the name. So whether you do preference voting or regular, all of that information is just going to Alan as council president, ultimately to offer the initial motion as to who to appoint.
I also want to suggest that if you're doing a ballot initially to determine how many people you're going to interview, that in a way establishes a sort of a preference order. So it may be duplicative to then have preference voting. You may already have done it with that choice of who to interview. I'll just put that out there for you. Alan?
So the preference voting as envisioned wouldn't be binding. It would just be an information point for the council and help direct the council president to make a motion.
Correct, and that's legally all it can be.
Yeah, and if there's only 3 people, I guess if you, for instance, and then you rank ordered them 1, 2, 3, somebody else rank orders them 2, 3, 4. There's what?
Star voting and there's preference voting. So which one do we mean if we're going down this road?
Well, I asked for a mathematical example of the preference voting, and maybe Beth, you can explain
We
that.
all
or-
got it.
Did you see that, Mike? Where you explain it in 7 words or less.
I might have to Glenn on that one.
Or Glenn.
You look at everybody's, I'm not counting words, you look at everybody's first preference.
That's 7, sorry.
Whichever candidate has the least amount, that person is eliminated. Whichever counselor voted for that person, you now look at that counselor's second choice.
If they voted that person as 1.
Exactly. So it's whoever. So as an example, Betty votes for candidate A, and on the first level of voting, candidate A is eliminated. Betty was the only one who voted for candidate A, so we now look at Betty's second choice. And if Betty's second choice is candidate B has 1 additional vote to whoever in your first choices voted for that individual. And
That's really how you would do your voting anyway.
Okay, Mike, you have a comment on
So
that?
again, the information will be there. You don't really have to say use preference voting, don't use preference voting. If you want to rank the people after you vote, you just put that information on your sheet when it gets returned to Beth, and all of that information will go to the council president as well as the rest of the council. So you'll have the information from each counselor as to who's their first choices, second choices, third choice, what you do with it, and whether you run the mathematical equation or not. Really doesn't matter.
unless the council says that's the way we're going to do it.
Yeah, let's just finish around, then you can comment, Mike. Okay.
Preference voting, thank you.
Okay, Claire?
Yeah, I like the preference voting as well, and I will say it's not exactly the same as voting to interview because we don't say who our first, second, and third choice is to interview.
True.
And then I agree with, Councilor Taylor's original reason for bringing that up is, if my first choice nobody else supports, but there's somebody else I like almost as much, but they wouldn't be my first choice, I can still vote for that second choice and not have my one vote completely not matter anymore through the process.
Right. Okay. Greg?
Yeah, I'm in favor of preference voting. I think it deepens the conversation, and I think it gives us a way to really kind of thin the herd, if you will. And I'm going to support preference voting.
I like that. All right, good analogy.
You know why they thin the herd.
Mike had one comment. He wants one comment to make.
And I waited till the end. One of the methods of preference voting is what you just mentioned. The other is one that was explained to me recently, and I may get it wrong, so stick with me. It's called star voting. Maybe you're better familiar with this than I am. It's where you, instead of putting the candidates in rank order, you rate the candidates on a scale of 1 to 5, and what it accomplishes is an automatic point system that automatically creates a more accurate picture when the candidate with the lowest results is dropped off and the next numbers pop up. You get the more accurate picture of the rank order of the body's preference. But that's another option.
I would second that.
Let's just add. We're now 10 minutes past our extended time.
So you'll have time to have more of this conversation if you want after you interview the candidates. So you don't have to decide the specifics there. There is at least one question that I have, since you have said you wanted to basically ballot for who's going to get interviewed. What's the threshold? If the candidate gets 1, 2, 3, 4.
3.
Okay, let's take a vote. So
At least 3 people don't want to interview them. There's no point.
Did everyone say 3? One,
That's fine.
An interview.
3.
I agree with 3.
3. Greg?
I agree with 3.
Okay, 3.
Okay, Beth will send out a ballot, Claire, to you and Greg, to the two of you, and I'll hand them to you before the
Can we
meeting's
vote
over.
for all of them or just 3? Like if you want to interview everybody, you can vote for all of them.
You can do that, right, because,
Vote for everyone you want.
So it's like the board and commission.
right, exactly.
We have ballots.
I believe we have answered all the questions. Thank you very much for preparing this for us. Thank you all for hanging in there and getting it done, and we're done.